Good afternoon or evening or morning, whatever it may be, when you're watching this. It's Steve from Hornby Militaria again. I thought I would put together a small video. I've been wanting to do one of these for quite a while because I find it particularly interesting, but you may be aware we've recently had a large number of World War I medals arrive for sale, which have gone up on the website in the last few days, but I want to talk about this one in particular. This is a 1914-15 star. It is named to Percy Steward. Percy Steward was a private in the 2nd battalion of the Suffolk Regiment, and when I have the medals like this for sale, I will research the individual, and sometimes completely out of the blue you will find that individual was killed or severely wounded or maybe died at home, which is what one of these was. Percy Steward was killed on the 13th of November 1916. He was killed in front of a small hamlet on the Somme battlefield known as Serre. Now Serre was very heavily attacked on the 1st of July 1916. The Accrington Pals, along with a number of other units, jumped off their frontline trenches, which ran through 4 copses. There were Matthew, Mark, Luke and John Copse. Their frontline trenches ran just inside the edge of these copses. The troops went over the top there. They found that the wire in front of them hadn't been cut by the bombardment. And the record shows that not many of these guys made it more than about 100 yards into no man's land. In fact, the trench line didn't change at all until 1917 when the Germans withdrew. So Percy here, he would have jumped off the same trenches that the Accrington Pals did, and he would have been attacking over the same ground as the Accrington Pals, that suffered all their casualties. Now, when I am researching a medal like this for a chap that has lost their life, I find myself being sucked into the story of the unit, and I find it's a very good way for me to increase my understanding of the various battles, because if you end up getting sucked into a war diary, you can spend hours and hours just going through it, looking at what the unit did, where they went, and how they suffered. The 2nd battalion of the Suffolks were hit very badly on that particular day. The battalion was pretty much decimated. There were some 272 dead, wounded or missing on that day, the 13th of November. Percy was among that number. He was one of the missing. He has no known grave. He's commemorated on the Thiepval Memorial. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the story of the 2nd Battalion as taken from their war diary. There's no real or my own interpretation gone into this. A lot of it is factual. Not only can we rely on the battalion's war diary, but the neighbouring battalions who also attacked on the same day have war diaries as well, which again help fill in the picture of what happened to Percy here. Anyway, I will run through that. Hopefully we'll do a bit of a virtual battlefield tour from Google Earth and whatever else we can find. I've got a number of images as well of the battlefield in front of Serre, both taken in the last few years and taken during the action as well. But anyway, let's leap into that. Now, the 2nd Battalion, they were in the area of the Somme, but they were not involved in any of the action on the 1st of July 1916. They first came into the Battle of the Somme at Delville Wood slightly later on in July, before they finally arrived in the sector where Serre is on the 9th of October 1916. They spent a week behind the lines at Courcelles, Nouvencourt. I think from the look of it, there had been a lot of rain recently because the trenches were described as being very muddy, in poor condition as well. And these were just the trenches well behind the front line. They did a couple of practice attacks in the middle of October before finally in early November they were ordered up to the front line at Serre. In fact, there were 2 orders received that were subsequently cancelled. The final order that was actually followed through arrived on the 12th of November. So this is the day before Percy was killed. This shows that W and Z company moved up in the morning, and X and Y company moved up in the afternoon. The last company didn't actually arrive in the area until 11 p.m. Movement was noted as having been over the top of the trenches due to the poor state of them. So presumably this is why it happened quite late at night, in order to get these guys over the tops of the trenches in darkness. The heavy rain also prevented the Royal Flying Corps from checking on the German wire. There'd been a 48-hour artillery bombardment as preparation for the attack on Serre. And because the RFC were unable to fly due to the conditions, no reports came back as to what state the German wire was in. It looks as though the area that the battalion took ran between the southern end of John Copse and the northern end of Luke Copse. Now it's a little difficult to see where that is on the current Google Earth imagery, because the entirety of 3 of the copses have been merged into one larger wood. Matthew Copse, which is at the southern end, appears to have entirely disappeared. But we do know that it was between Luke and John Copse that the 2nd Battalion took their frontline positions. Their target seems to have been German trenches to the northwest of Serre village. You can see from the trench map that there are 4 lines of German trenches, and the attack order seems to suggest that each of these lines was to be taken in turn until they were right on top of Serre village. The War Diary reports a quiet night. There was apparently a bell heard ringing some way behind the German line at 2 a.m. And the diarist who compiled the unit War Diary speculates that this may have been some sort of early warning that the Germans had got wind of the attack, and that this bell ringing was a notice to the troops. This was at 2 a.m. At 4 a.m. tea and rum was issued. A couple of the casualties of the day occurred here in the outpost line. The outpost line was sat slightly further in front of the British front line, which is where some of the troops went out to. The casualties there are thought to have been from British shells and British machine gun fire, rather unfortunately. The final order to advance came at 5:45 a.m. The War Diary reports that there was a lot of mist, low-hanging mist, and an awful lot of smoke from shells across no man's land, and this resulted in the companies that were attacking losing their direction and becoming mixed. It also describes that no man's land was, whilst it was reasonably good on the British side, it was very much broken up on the German side. There's no more, because of the nature of the War Diary. The next report we have is at 6:20 a.m. Where rumours appear to have reached the British unit headquarters that the attack was failing. And in fact, at 6:35, the company sergeant major of the support company, who were out on the right flank, he came back to headquarters, which was in Rob Roy Trench. You can see Rob Roy Trench on the trench maps. It was just behind the front line. Anyway, he came back to Rob Roy Trench and reported that all but one of the officers in the 2 right-hand companies had fallen. He also reported that the men were held up in front of the German line and that some of them had fallen back to the outpost line. As the men of the 2nd Battalion began to fall back into the original frontline trenches they jumped off from, there were numerous reports of men being trapped in a concertina-type wire that the Germans had deployed, where they were being gunned down by machine gun and rifle fire. It also emerged that the companies on the left-hand side of the advance were held up and had fallen back to trenches around John Copse. One of the senior officers there, Captain Nichols, was trying to reorganise them to get the attack going again, but the whole situation seems to be very confused at this point. And this is put down to the number of officer casualties that happened very early on, particularly on the right-hand side of the advance. The War Diary does have the entire order for the attack, as well as an analysis available. You'll find that on Ancestry. It is difficult to find, but if not, you'll find it on the National Archives website as well. It goes on to report that at the end of the attack there were, as far as known, 17 killed, 94 wounded, and 161 missing, which is presumably includes Percy, the recipient of the medal. The Commonwealth War Graves website has 84 records for the 2nd Battalion on the 13th. These are mostly on the Thiepval Memorial, although there are some in Luke Copse Cemetery, the Queen's Cemetery, or Euston Road Cemetery, which was a frontline cemetery set up for the anticipated casualties of the 1st of July. This is the area as it appears today. This is Serre village. The direction we are viewing here is from behind the German trenches, looking at the copses. These are a number of battlefield cemeteries that sat within what was no man's land. The 3 copses that the lads attacked from were here. Matthew Copse is down here, or it was down here. Which is no longer there, but the British frontline trench ran straight through the very front of these copses. This area was no man's land. The German trench system ran across the front of Serre village here. There were approximately 4 lines of trenches round about here, which was the objective of the 2nd Battalion. The 2nd Battalion took this particular bit of trench. This is where they took over the particular bit of trench. If we just move around, so we've got a view of the attacking troops. So they would have attacked from the part of wood there across no man's land up towards the German trench system, which ran across in front of Serre village. There isn't a huge amount of street view imagery around the site, but if we just drop in here. Now this shows Serre village off in the tree line at the end of this lane. If we turn around to our right, this is no man's land. The German trench system was approximately there. These are the wooded areas that were the 3 copses, now one larger wood. Just move back down slightly, get a better view of the copses. So this is no man's land directly in front of us. We are looking straight along no man's land here. The attacking troops came from the right, attacking towards the left of the picture. Back up towards Serre village there. We'll just zoom back out. Not sure where it's put us here. I think we're nowhere near where we need to be here, actually. Let me just try and get us back to where we're supposed to be, because we're nowhere around here, I don't think. Go back up to Albert. And from Albert we should be able to work it out. There we go, there's there. So if we have a look on the other side, again, this is just behind the German front line. Attacking troops came from left to right here. That's Serre village in the tree line. And if you look in the direction the British troops came from, you'll notice you can only see the very tops of the trees that formed the copses. That's because we are on the reverse of a slope. The German very first front line sat on the top of this ridge, on the top of this slope, which
over the horizon slopes back downwards towards the copse. It's a common feature of many of the areas attacked on the Somme, because the Germans position their frontline trenches on the tops of slopes.
So that is Percy's story. The medal is on the website. If it hasn't sold by now, it depends how long ago I recorded this and when you're watching it, but it may have sold. But that was Percy's story. Like I say, whenever I have these casualty medals, I do spend a bit of time researching the circumstances behind the casualty, behind the death, because I think it's a good way of commemorating that man as well. You know, just for a moment, he isn't forgotten. He isn't one of the millions of dead from the First World War. You know, we are remembering him, whilst we may not know very much information about him, other than what we can glean from Commonwealth war graves and things like that. You know, it certainly it makes dealing militaria, it makes it a little bit more worthwhile for me. You know, the fact that I can bring these guys' stories back to life again. That's the end. I hope to do more of these as I get more casualty medals in, which hopefully there's going to be a load arriving in January. Not confirmed yet, but yeah, we'll see. Thanks very much.